There's a word in this warning that carries a lot more weight than you could possibly imagine. A word that has significantly more power than it once did. There used to be a time where copyright was something simple. A time where copyright and the public domain lived together in harmony. Copyright is something that has grown abundantly over the past few decades, and has recently become grappled by major corporations. And I think to discuss copyright, we should start from the very beginning. May 1790. Just a year after our country was founded, copyright was written into law of the United States. Lawmakers have made our founding fathers proud by establishing freedom of writers to protect their works, and to ensure that they later reach the public domain. The Copyright Act of 1790 guaranteed writers protection of their work for 14 years at the time of publication, and would also be approved for an additional 14-year term if they accepted and/or were alive during the time. Then the law was updated. February 1831. Congress approves of a copyright extension. This extension allowed writers to hold their works for 28 years, with the option of a 14-year renewal. If you think this triggered freedom-happy founding fathers, then you've seen nothing yet. March 1909. Just after William Howard Taft boots Teddy Roosevelt out of office, the Copyright Act of 1909 was set into law. This updated law allowed authors to retain their works for the same 28-year period, while seeking an additional 28-year renewal term. Then, on October 19, 1976, came the Copyright Act of 1976. Treasure hunters of the public domain were thwarted with new stipulations of authors maintaining their works. Authors now were able to retain their works for the rest of their lives, plus an additional 50 years after their deaths. Then, out of nowhere, in 1998, the Sony-Bono Act extension drops, pushed by a company that will remain unnamed. The Sony-Bono extension added another 20 years to copyright protection, for a reason we will get into later. But you may ask yourselves, what exactly is the problem with extending copyright? Well, for one, copyright benefits the wealthiest artists the most. Those who can maintain their contracts the longest will be able to receive the strongest, most consistent royalties. According to Martin Kretschmer, empirical studies consistently show that only a small percentage of artists are able to control their contracts. According to Collecting Society statistics, the top 10% of artists account for between 80 and 90% of total earnings. This goes to show that record labels are more willing to cling on to their copyright because it'll earn them more in long-term investments. Secondly, if companies can hold their copyright protection for longer periods of time, they clearly reap the benefits for that period of time. However, copyright benefits a work the most after it is first published anyway. A report of the 2004 shares of a records company in the United Kingdom shows that nearly 2/3 of sales came from the 2000s alone, with sales of records with copyright between the 1940s and 1980s only garnering 6.4% of all sales. While it does still earn these record companies pennies on the dollar, it's limited in comparison to what they make with newer material, which almost makes everything seem a little counterproductive. I understand. You may be asking yourselves, why is all of this really important? I mean, is copyright really that big of a deal? Can't we let our lawmakers just handle the situation? Right? Right? Considering how we went from a simple act in 1790 to having a 350-plus page document around copyright and a United States Copyright Office, it's clear to see how widespread copyright has become in the country. And how has Congress dealt with updating copyright laws? It could be a little bit better. Congress still has not put a cap on copyright extension to this date. It's mainly been brushed back time and time again to be dealt with another day. In fact, when the Sony-Bono Act was passed, Disney chairman Michael Eisner lobbied Senate Majority Leader Trent Lott directly. Additionally, 18 of the 25 sponsors received money from Disney, and when discussion was presented to the floor for debate, opponents weren't given proper time to present their arguments. According to Professor Dennis Karjala, the hearings were combined with some other bills, so they were not publicized under the bill numbers for those trying to follow the legislation. The proponents of extension, surprise surprise, knew about the House hearings and of course testified in favor. The opponents did not even know the hearings took place until several months later. This means that there really was no opposition to the Sony-Bono Act at all, mostly because it was purposely kept under shade. Hold on to your keyboards for a little bit longer, because I have a feeling that this journey is about to take a tumble down the rabbit hole. It should be no surprise that Disney has had its own share of controversial spotlight since its inception. In October 2017, the corporation sued a small-time company called Characters for Hire, a business that hosts children's birthday parties and brings characters dressed very familiarly to iconic Disney characters. Disney caught wind of the business and sued Characters for Hire on the grounds of how the business provides unlicensed and poor quality appearances and performances of Disney characters. In their preliminary statement, they clarified that Characters for Hire copies, displays, and mimics the trademark and copyright-protected images, names, likenesses, and personas of the plaintiff's characters, as well as the plaintiff's films, musical, and other creative works, to advertise and provide unauthorized versions of these characters to the fans of the plaintiff's works. While the plaintiffs of the case present a logical argument, the defendants counter this point with an argument of their own. They state that the characters Disney claims copyright over have entered the public domain long ago. From their statement, numerous characters to which the plaintiffs claim rights in this action, namely Rapunzel, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, Aladdin, Beauty, Snow White, The Little Mermaid, Thor, Loki, and Princess Aurora, originally appeared in fairy tales, folklores, and other works hundreds, and in some instances thousands of years ago. Here, the plaintiffs and defendants clash, with one side claiming copyright on characters that the other side claims they don't actually have copyright to. This begs the question of what constitutes as copyright, and if works in the public domain should be more protected despite being in the public domain. Disney has gone under fire, ironically enough, for situations like this before, but one seemed to have fallen under the radar below all the rest. About a month after The Lion King was released, an LA Times article discussed similarities between the animated Disney film and a Japanese anime that was called Kimba the White Lion. It was originally a manga of the same name that ran between 1950 and 1954, and became an anime between 1965 to 66. The show had a 52-episode run and spawned 2 sequel series and 3 films. Just by examining some side-by-side comparisons between the two, it's pretty easy to point out some similarities that are found in both productions. As a matter of fact, if Tezuka Productions, the production company behind Kimba the White Lion, they might actually have some ground to stand on if they were to sue Disney. Now you may be asking yourselves, is there any chance that we can overcome this excessive confusion with copyright law? Surprisingly, yes. After the SOPA and PIPA protests that swarmed the internet in January of 2012, copyright has taken a more central focus on the interwebbed populace. Over 14 million people contacted their congressmen to protest the SOPA and PIPA bills. Surprisingly enough, Congress listened, and the bills were shut down. Had the bills been passed, lots of artwork, video essays, and other forms of digital entertainment that may have had copyright characters in them could be blocked or deleted entirely. In fact, SOPA originally proposed to have ISPs blacklisted if they had, quote, promoted piracy, quote, on the web, something too vague to be considered law. It seems that Congress has finally caught on to the changing times after simply glossing over copyright, especially copyright on the internet, since 1998. Then again, it may also just be because they'd be afraid of the public lashing out a second time. There also hasn't been any copyright extensions since 1998. The company that pushed for copyright extensions in the past may finally be thrown into the public domain. If there is no push made to extend copyright in 2018, there won't be one. Disney has helped prevent works from 1923 and beyond from being put in the public domain since 1976, and now these works may finally experience life in the public domain. Neither the Motion Picture Association of America nor the Recording Industry Association of America are pushing for copyright extensions in 2018, and Disney is nowhere to be found on the horizon. And while there's still the issue of trademark with Disney's properties, this still has a notable push of progression towards the never-ending issue of copyright protection. Now you at least have a better understanding on how copyright works in the United States, and how complex of an issue it can be. I understand that a lot of confusion can arise from copyright, but it is important to discuss, especially since it is something that could end up impacting everyone, especially if you want to get into any of the creative fields, such as creative writing, broadcasting, anything with television, music, or any other sort of entertainment. Knowing your copyright is something that will help you in your career in the future. Oh man, I think I might have just been found by a mouse that will go unnamed. So I should probably head out, but thanks for watching. I really hope this video helps you in understanding copyright.